Hello, everyone. Good morning. Let me see if I can. So I'm Martha Godina. I'm a research associate at the University of Cambridge, and I'm going to talk to you about two research projects that I've been involved regarding the reuse of timber in construction. The first one is the strategies for salvaging and repurposing timber elements from existing buildings. And this is a project that I did when I was working as a structural engineer at Elliott Wood, and was funded by the Worshipful Company of a constructor with the Sustainability Scholarship. And the other project is WOODCIRCLES, which is an acronym or like a short for Integrated Circular and Digitally Supported Sustainable Solution for waste minimization and carbon storage in buildings in the construction sector. This is the research project that I'm currently working on at the university, and is funded by the Horizon Europe. So the first project of strategies for salvaging and repurposing timber from existing buildings is focusing on salvaging these timbers from the buildings that haven't actually been designed to be easily disassembled. So all those buildings that are currently in the existing building stock. And the scope of this research was basically mainly to look at the UK situation. So what we currently have is we have like a linear model. So we take material from the forest, we produce like our timber products that we can use then later on in construction. Once the buildings reach their end of life, then all of this material is reprocessed, most of it in the UK. However, most of this reprocessing, it means that it's not going to landfill, but it means that it's going to be used mostly as, for example, as a biomass for energy recovery. So more than 65% is used as biomass, about 22% for recycling. But this recycling is mostly into panel board, for example, or animal bedding and so on. And very, very little is go to disposal. So this means like landfill, but this is mainly incentivized because of the high landfill tax. So we can see here that the UK has a very linear model regarding timber and construction. And on top of that, like the UK is the second largest importer globally of timber products. So we import products from Europe but also globally. So all different sorts of products that we import because we don't have much of the one that we use. So we have here this is the waste hierarchy. The waste hierarchy, like the inverted pyramid from the waste framework directly, according to the EU. So similarly as the pyramid that we just saw, so the first thing that we want to do is to prevent any demolition, probably. The second one is reuse, then recycling, recovery, and disposal. But the point that we wanted to make here before starting the project was basically the fact that recycling can have two ways. So we can either recycle something and produce a product with lower value, or we can recycle something to produce a new product that potentially has like a higher value. And when I mean higher value, is like new products that can potentially replace like high energy intensive materials like steel or concrete. So therefore, what we wanted to understand in the research was how can we repurpose, so either reuse or upcycling the wood that comes from demolition to actually keep these wood materials in circulation for as long as possible. So the key objective of this research, or what we actually did, was we conducted a series of interviews to different stakeholders in the construction sector to understand what were the barriers and opportunities, to have like a clear idea from the demolition side, but also from the construction side. What are the barriers and also opportunities for reclaiming wood from one side, and also to reuse wood from the other side. So in terms of the barriers that we got from basically the responses. So the barriers for reclamation, most of them are like the increase in time for the careful deconstruction of wood from existing buildings. Therefore, also the increasing cost, more logistics because they need to find also a space where to store the material in situ, but also find someone that is willing to take the material away and pay for it or not. And then demolition methods and skill set, because they highlighted the fact that different skill sets might be required that are different to that of demolition, like for the construction. And the safety, for example, of moving the materials around in the site, especially for tight sites where there's not enough space to, for example, stockpile the materials while someone goes and take it away. And basically uncertainties because we don't know exactly what the value of the material is even before taking it out. In terms of repurposing, the main barrier that was highlighted by the participants was mostly like certifications, because there's currently no grading methods to grade, so the reclaimed timber. So everything that has been done has been done using the current standards that are designed for new timber. And in terms of the supply chains, most of the barriers were related to the lack of demand, because basically nobody's asking for it. The fact that it's perceived to be uneconomic at the moment as how the supply chain is. The security of supply, because we don't know whether we will be able to get all the material that we require on time and in the quantities that we needed. Limited market, because some of the participants saw that the direct reuse, for example, of a sawn timber, so for example, using a joist as a joist, to be only restricted to the private residential sector, and the amount of timber in building structures, because we don't know exactly how much is out there to create like a viable business model. And also the clients as a barrier, but also it was one of the drivers as well that was cited. So in terms of the opportunities we have from the reclamation side, we have a series of them. So undertake pre-demolition audits, surveys and potentially inventories as well, use the waste wood assessment guidance to understand whether the material is potentially hazardous or not. But also something that stood up was the fact that we currently, so the tenders are mostly weighted towards, okay, what's the cost? What's the cost of this demolition? And nobody so far is kind of taking into consideration any carbon, for example, or diverting from recycling rather than only diverting from landfill, because everybody's saying, oh yes, we're diverting from landfill, but we need to think a little bit further to see how can we divert from only recycling to upcycle or reuse something. From the repurposing side, one of the interesting takeaways, apart from the fact that new development of new infrastructure, new jobs, was the fact that in contrary to the direct reuse that was mostly perceived as something that could be viable, for example, in the private residential sector, the upcycle of material, of waste wood, into products such as glulam or CLT, that we are calling here like mass secondary timber, they saw this as something that can potentially be used anywhere, even in the commercial sector, as long as they have like the required certification. So there's the potential to exploit in here in regards to the supply chain. So based on this information, so what are the strategies that we identified from our interviewees? So firstly, we need to identify the source. So are we going to try to source directly from a demolition site, or are we going to source directly from reclamation or circular hubs? Then understand what is the feasibility of doing this by undertaking like pre-demolition audits and some testing as well. Understand what will be the reuse pathways, so either direct reuse or upcycling. And then, based on that, define what testing will you require, plan for careful demolition, and so on. So the second project is WOODCIRCLES, is the one that I'm currently working on. This is an EU Horizon project, and it has like many collaborators that are working on this. So we, the University of Cambridge, are one of the collaborators. In total, we have 19 participants in this project. Only 2 universities, because the idea is to make this research very close to the market, because we are looking into developing new value chains, so new construction products from this waste wood. And the majority of them are from industry in 3 partner cities where we are aiming to have some demonstrators. So very general, this is the WOODCIRCLES concept. So we have defined like two different concepts. So firstly, the urban forest, which is the actual, all the wood material that is currently in our building stock. And we are leading one of the work package here at the university, where we are actually mapping what is the quantities and qualities of these materials in the building stock. The other concept is the urban sawmill. This is the idea of a new facility that is capable of turning like waste wood into high-value material or high-value new products that can be used as feedstock for the manufacture of other construction products. One of the main aims of this project is the development of two new value chains, so the engineered wood products and also insulation products from this waste wood. So from the waste wood that eventually is going to be reprocessed in this kind of urban sawmill that I just mentioned. Something that WOODCIRCLES is considering as well is design for manufacture, assembly, and disassembly, so that we can ensure that once these products are already like in the building stock again, we have like an easier way to make them go back to reuse them directly rather than the current situation. So WOODCIRCLES is basically based on three pillars. So the first one is regarding the materials, the design for disassembly, and also the digital tools. So we're aiming on map how many materials are out there. So in terms of, okay, we need to know in quantities, how much are we expecting or are we expecting that it's going to be released from the demolitions, and what is the expected quality as well, to know whether it will be reusable or not. And it will be useful as well to have these also embedded into digital tools so it can help us make decisions. Another step will be the design for disassembly, that this is led by Watt Istilton Architects. And the last one is in terms of the urban sawmill, that this development is driven by Robot Lab from the University of Amsterdam, which is working together with Trimble to develop these digital tools. The pillar number 2 is regarding the certification, the testing, and the sustainability assessment like LCA, LCC, and the social aspect to understand whether everything actually makes sense environmentally as well. And full-scale demonstrators, because we will fabricate some products from this waste wood, and we create one demonstrator that will travel from the three partner cities that we have, from Tartu, Turin, and Rotterdam. Finally, we'll have also like work package that is working on the business model to understand the viability of actually doing this in an ideal kind of like a value chains or supply chain. And also in training material, policy guidance, and market uptake, and of course, like the dissemination and communication. This is one of examples of the waste wood that we have been collecting for the development of these new materials. So they source materials from a demolition site, and then they started reprocessing. Firstly, like a visual inspection, kind of discarding material that is already rot, that they need to cut or discard the whole thing. And then testing different denailing methods, because one of the kind of like challenges for manufacturing new engineered products from waste wood is the fact that it's quite difficult to actually remove all the metals that are inside the wood, because some of them are even difficult to identify with metal detectors and so on. Even if sometimes they are identified, it's quite difficult to take them off, and what if you create coals and so on. And like I mentioned, one of the work package that we're working at the university is on understanding how much is out there. So we are working on developing an analysis, material flow analysis, and also a stock analysis. And the stock analysis is focused on the partner cities. So we're basically collecting data at city level, building level, and component level to understand what would be what is the actual building stock in there, to calculate the material intensity based on different building typologies identified from the three partner cities, and together obviously with the data at city level of the buildings of each of the municipalities, to calculate in terms of basically volume or weight, but also the expected quality. And finally, what are we doing with this data? So obviously the material stock is going to be informing the material flow analysis, because this is going to include everything that comes in the system, how much we are basically using, how much we are basically disposing, and what else it's end up being staying in the system as a stock, so basically our building stock. And that will be for the analysis to understand how everything is flowing. But we are also linking this to one of the tools that Tremble is developing, Locus, so that we can actually also visualize where our materials are, to understand also geographically, like, okay, we have most of the materials that we are expecting to be released in the future around these areas, so probably urban sawmills or the ones that have been developed. It makes sense to be developed in these areas and so on. So that's all from me. So these are the references that I'm using, and just to thank you for all the funding that supported these two research projects. And that's all. Thank you.